My beloved brothers and sisters, there comes a point in your life where the pain of holding on becomes heavier than the fear of letting go. And it's in that moment when your heart says, Ya Allah, I accept what you've written, that something shifts, not just around you, but inside of you. You begin to rise. You see, we struggle because we keep fighting what Allah has already decreed. We try to control the uncontrollable. But the moment you say, I trust you, Ya Rabb, you're no longer resisting His mercy, you're walking into it. And that is where true peace begins. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to a plan that is wiser than yours. It's not weakness, it's worship. And Allah has promised, indeed, with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shar 94:6. So if you're tired, confused, or lost, maybe this is the moment where you let go and let Allah raise you, restore you, and guide you to exactly where you're meant to be. 1. The struggle before surrender. Before surrendering to Allah's plan, the heart often goes through a storm of confusion. You question everything, why your du'as are delayed, why your pain keeps increasing, why the answers seem silent. But the struggle is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of your sincerity. Even the Prophet ﷺ cried out in hardship. Your cries, your restless nights, your silent frustration, they are seen. Allah never abandons the one who turns to Him with a trembling heart. The struggle is not wasted, it softens the soul for what's coming. Sometimes Allah allows the pain to linger so that you reach a level of humility you would have never found in comfort. Look at Yunus in the belly of the whale. His real surrender came after the struggle. He had to feel trapped, forgotten by the world, before he turned completely to Allah. Our struggles are our whales. They isolate us, shake us, and finally bring us to a realization no one can help us but Allah. That's not a punishment, that's purification. It's during the struggle that your prayers become real, not rushed, not robotic, but full of tears and trembles. It's when the soul finally begins to speak what the tongue had memorized for years. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil doesn't just become a verse, it becomes your reality. Allah hears it from your brokenness, and that brokenness becomes the doorway to your strength. In the struggle, your faith is not tested to break, it's tested to awaken. Think of Maryam, exhausted, alone, under a palm tree. She cried out in despair, wishing for death. But it was right there, in that moment of complete emptiness, that Allah sent her relief. The date tree shook, the stream flowed, and a miracle was born. Often, it's just when you feel you can't go on anymore that the ease begins. Allah allows you to bend, not to break, but so you finally let go of control and witness His power. Many people feel guilty for struggling, as if true faith means you're always calm. That's not true. Even the prophets had moments of intense fear, sadness, and frustration. What matters is not the absence of struggle, it's who you turn to in that struggle. Allah doesn't expect perfection, He expects connection. Even if all you can say is, Ya Allah, help me, that is enough. In fact, sometimes that's all your heart truly needs. The beauty is when the struggle is finally over, you look back and realize it shaped you, it deepened you, it made your heart more reliant, your prayers more sincere, your vision more eternal. Allah never wasted your pain. You needed that night to value the light. And now, as you surrender, you're not falling, you're rising. Because those who submit to Allah never lose. They are simply being prepared for something far greater than they imagined. 2. What true acceptance looks like in Islam. True acceptance in Islam is not a passive act. It's a conscious, deliberate trust in Allah's wisdom even when your heart is aching. It's looking at what didn't work out and saying Alhamdulillah with tears in your eyes. It's when you stop trying to control what's beyond your reach and start focusing on pleasing the one who already controls everything. Acceptance is not giving up, it's giving in to the one who knows the full picture. In the Quran, Allah teaches us that He plans with precision. Nothing is random. Every delay, every heartbreak, every test, it's crafted with care. Acceptance begins when you stop seeing your hardship as a punishment and start seeing it as a path to closeness with your Lord. The pain might still be there, but the heart no longer resists it. Instead, it turns that pain into dua, into patience, into quiet strength. Think of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu when he was commanded to leave his wife and child in the barren desert. True acceptance was in his feet as he walked away, not knowing how they would survive, but knowing that Allah had instructed him. It wasn't easy, but it was trust. And that trust led to the miracle of Zamzam. That's what true acceptance looks like. Letting go of your own understanding and leaning entirely on Allah's promise. Acceptance in Islam doesn't mean you won't feel sadness. Maryam felt deep anguish even while being chosen by Allah. Yaqub as-Salaha cried until he went blind. The Prophet ﷺ buried multiple children with his own hands. Pain is not proof of weakness, it's proof that you're human. But what Islam teaches is this: even in sorrow, we say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Even in loss, we remember our return is to Him. When you truly accept Allah's decree, your complaints turn into conversations. You don't just say, why me? You say, Ya Allah, guide me through this. You start recognizing that your situation is not happening to destroy you, but to direct you. You stop asking for the storm to disappear and start asking for the strength to walk through it with dignity and faith. True acceptance shows in the way you treat others during your own hardship. You smile even while you're healing. You give even when you're waiting to receive. You forgive even when you haven't yet been healed. Because deep down, your heart knows whatever I do for Allah, He will return it in ways beyond my imagination. Acceptance isn't just internal, it's visible in your character. In Islam, acceptance is deeply connected to tawakkul, reliance on Allah. It's not passive sitting, it's active faith. You tie your camel, you do your best, and then you say, Ya Allah, I leave the result to you. Whether things go how you wanted or not, you still say Alhamdulillah. That's the beauty of a heart anchored in Allah. It finds peace in both abundance and restriction. Prophet Musa alayhi salam stood at the sea with a terrified nation behind him and an enemy approaching. From the outside, there was no escape. But he said with full certainty, my Lord is with me. He will guide me. That's the language of acceptance. It's calm in chaos. It's faith when nothing makes sense. It's the soul's refusal to panic because it knows who is in charge. Acceptance doesn't mean you don't ask Allah for change. It means you keep asking while also trusting that the current moment is exactly where you're meant to be. You raise your hands in dua, but your heart is not desperate, it's assured, because it knows if it's delayed, it's wisdom. If it's different, it's mercy. If it's denied, it's protection. That level of peace comes only from Allah. In your quietest moments, you'll find acceptance growing when you reflect on how far you've come. Remember the times you thought you'd never recover, and yet here you are. That's Allah's mercy. That's proof that His plan was always at work, even when you couldn't see it. Sometimes just surviving is a sign that Allah was with you the whole time. True acceptance is when you stop living for the outcome and start living for Allah's pleasure. You stop chasing certainty in this world and start chasing nearness to the one who controls it. And that shift changes everything. Your goals become purer, your heart becomes softer, and your vision becomes clearer. This world is no longer your destination, it's just your journey. And finally, when acceptance settles in your heart, you feel light, not because the hardship is gone, but because the resistance is. You walk slower, breathe deeper, and smile more, not because life is perfect, but because you know it's divinely orchestrated. You trust that whatever you lost, Allah will replace. Whatever hurt, He will heal. Whatever confused you, He will clarify. And that trust is where your real strength begins. 3. The turning point. From resistance to reliance. There's a moment in every believer's life when something shifts, a breaking point that becomes a beginning. The heart, once heavy with resistance, starts to soften. You no longer fight what's happening. You no longer demand to understand everything. That's the turning point. When your tears change from frustration to submission. When instead of asking, why me? You whisper, guide me. Resistance is rooted in fear. Fear of losing control. Fear that what's ahead will break you. Fear that Allah's plan might not align with your own. But when the heart realizes it was never in control to begin with, peace starts to enter. You don't surrender because you've given up. You surrender because you finally trust the one who never gave up on you. The Quran reminds us of this moment in the story of Musa alayhi salam, standing at the Red Sea with an army behind him and no path ahead. His people panicked, but he said calmly, "Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me." That was his turning point. When the outward reality looked impossible, he still chose reliance. And that reliance became the doorway to the miracle. From resistance to reliance is not a straight path. It's filled with relapses, doubts, and moments of weakness. But with every prayer, every cry in sujood, every whispered Hasbi Allahu, you're walking closer to Allah. You may stumble, but you're still moving forward. And Allah sees that effort. He loves it. He nurtures it. Until your heart stops wrestling with His decree. Reliance is not laziness. It's not doing nothing and waiting for everything. It's doing your part while resting your heart with Allah. You apply, you try, you plan, but you no longer panic. Because deep down you believe if Allah wrote it for me, it will come. And if He didn't, no power in the world can make it mine. That mindset changes everything. Sometimes the turning point is not dramatic. It's quiet. It comes when you're lying on your bed after a long painful day and you say, Ya Allah, I leave it to you. No one else hears it, but the heavens do. And that moment, though small in appearance, is massive in meaning. Because that's when your heart begins its journey from chaos to calm. Reliance means you've stopped tying your happiness to outcomes. You're no longer happy only if something happens. Instead, you're content because you've chosen to trust. You realize that Allah's plans are always better than your own, even when they hurt, even when they confuse you, even when they're not what you wanted, because He sees what you don't. In Islam, reliance tawakkul is an act of worship. It's not a mindset, it's a spiritual posture. It's knowing that your job is to strive and Allah's job is to deliver what's best. Even the Prophet ﷺ was taught to rely on Allah completely during battle, during rejection, during loss. His heart was trained to lean on the eternal, not the temporary. Many people feel they can't rely because their faith is not perfect. But Allah never asks for perfect faith. He asks for a sincere heart. He asks you to try, to turn to Him again and again, even when your mind is still unsure, even when your past haunts you, even when your heart is tired. Because reliance doesn't come after clarity, it brings clarity. There's a beautiful irony in Islam. The more you rely on Allah, the stronger you become. The more you surrender to Him, the more power He gives you. Not worldly power, but spiritual resilience. You begin to carry burdens differently. You smile in storms. You find light in places that used to be dark, because you now see life through the lens of divine wisdom. Every storm you face is an invitation not to panic, but to rely, to say, I don't know how, but I know who. That shift changes your du'as. They become deeper, less desperate, more trusting. You stop begging for outcomes and start begging for nearness to Allah, knowing that closeness to Him is the real victory, no matter what happens in this world. And when reliance becomes your way of life, you become unshakable, not because life stops testing you, but because your soul no longer fears the test. You walk with dignity through difficulty. You respond with prayer instead of panic. And you rise not through force, but through faith. That is the power of a heart that has turned from resistance to reliance. 4. How Sabr activates your rise. Sabr isn't just patience, it's power in silence. It's the strength to remain still while your heart is breaking. In Islam, Sabr isn't weakness, it's an active choice to keep your faith firm, your tongue pure, and your heart steady, even when everything around you is falling apart. It is through Sabr that you begin to rise, not outwardly at first, but inwardly, where it truly matters. Every believer who rises with Sabr. Look at the stories in the Quran. Every prophet went through seasons of waiting, pain, rejection, or loss, but they didn't give up. They didn't speak out in anger against their Lord. Instead, they practiced deep patience, and through that, they were elevated. Allah is not unaware of your struggle. He's preparing your soul for something greater through it. When you are patient, you are not delaying success, you are deepening your roots. trees don't grow tall overnight. They spend years strengthening underground before they even break the surface. In the same way, Sabr builds the foundation for your growth, your character, your connection with Allah, your resilience. It all grows in those unseen moments of struggle. Sabr doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean you don't cry. The Prophet ﷺ cried when his loved ones passed away. He felt sadness, pain, even fear. But what made his sabr special was that he never allowed those emotions to make him lose trust in Allah. That's the example we follow. You can feel deeply and still be among those with the highest level of sabr. The reward for sabr is not just in the afterlife, it begins here. The Quran says, indeed, Allah is with the patient. Imagine that. The creator of the heavens and the earth with you, just because you chose to stay calm, stay faithful, and not lose hope. That closeness gives you light in your darkest hours. You may be tired, but you are never alone. When you respond to hardship with sabr, Allah elevates you in ways no human effort ever could. You might not get the exact result you wanted, but you get something better. Peace of mind, clarity of heart, and the companionship of your Lord. That spiritual rise often comes before the worldly one, and it's more lasting, more fulfilling, and more real. Think of Ayub. He lost everything. His health, his family, his wealth. But he didn't complain. He didn't say, why me? He stayed in remembrance. He waited. And when Allah restored him, He gave him back more than he had before. That's the pattern of sabr. It delays, but it never denies. It tests, but it always transforms. Sabr gives your heart the space to breathe, even when life feels suffocating. It allows you to pause before reacting, to reflect before speaking, to choose prayer over panic. That inner control gives you strength that others can't understand. They see you standing, smiling, enduring, and wonder how. The answer is always with Allah. True sabr is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It's found in the mother who keeps trusting Allah while raising her children alone, in the student who fails but tries again, in the man who walks away from haram even when it breaks his heart. These are the real heroes. They rise every day, not in headlines, but in the sight of Allah. Every time you choose sabr, you are building something. Maybe you can't see it yet, but Allah can. You're being shaped into someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Sabr is not passive waiting, it's active growth. You're being prepared for blessings you don't yet see and positions you're not yet ready for. But through sabr, you will be. Sabr is the gatekeeper of greatness. Without it, talents are wasted, faith wavers, and anger wins. But with it, your purpose becomes clear, your tests become tools, your delay becomes development. Many people fail not because they weren't capable, but because they weren't patient. Patience unlocks what talent alone never could. When the world tells you to react, sabr teaches you to respond with wisdom. It trains your ego. It humbles your soul. It protects your heart from impulsiveness. In every argument, every hardship, every delay, patience gives you a higher vantage point. You're no longer reacting from pain, you're moving with purpose. Even in victory, sabr is required. When success finally comes, sabr keeps you grounded. It reminds you who brought you here. It protects you from pride and keeps your heart connected to Allah. Because sabr isn't just for struggle, it's for every stage of life. It's a companion, not just a momentary shield. Allah promises in Surah Az-Zumar, indeed, the patient will be given their reward without account. No number, no limit, just pure reward from the most merciful. That's how much Allah values your restraint, your tears held back, your trust maintained. Every second you were patient is recorded and rewarded. So, when you feel like you're being buried by life, remember you might actually be getting planted. And with sabr, you will rise again, stronger, closer to Allah, with a heart that knows. The rise wasn't in avoiding the test, but in walking through it patiently, gracefully, faithfully. 5. Quranic stories of rising after surrender. The Quran is not just a book of rules, it's a book of real human stories. And again, it shows us the pattern. Those who surrender to Allah rise. Not always immediately, not always in the way they expected, but always in a way that transformed their lives and brought them closer to the divine. These stories are not just for reflection, they are for your strength. Take the story of Yunus. He left his people in frustration, boarded a ship, and ended up in the belly of a whale. In the depths of darkness, physically and spiritually, he remembered Allah. And when he surrendered fully, saying, "There is no God but you, glory be to you, I was among the wrongdoers," Allah raised him from the ocean to the shore and restored his mission. His rise began with humility. Then there is Musa, a man who fled Egypt as a fugitive, alone, afraid and uncertain. Yet when he turned to Allah, Allah turned him into a prophet, a leader, a miracle bearer. He returned to the land he once fled, this time not running, but guiding. His rise was not despite his weakness, but because of his surrender. He allowed Allah to lead, and that made all the difference. Maryam is one of the most powerful examples. A young woman, alone and pregnant, misunderstood by her people. She surrendered to Allah's command without fully knowing the outcome. And in that surrender, she became the mother of Isa, a symbol of purity, patience, and trust. Her story teaches us that even in complete isolation, Allah can lift you to unimaginable heights. Think of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, asked to sacrifice what he loved most, his son. It was the ultimate test of surrender. And yet, when he submitted fully, Allah replaced the sacrifice with a ram and honored him for generations. His legacy lives in the rituals of Hajj. Through surrender, he didn't lose his son. He gained closeness to Allah and a status unlike any other. We also see the story of Yusuf, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, thrown into prison, all for years. But throughout it all, he never stopped turning to Allah. And when the time was right, Allah raised him to power and reunited his broken family. Yusuf didn't rise by force. He rose through quiet surrender and consistent character, even in darkness. Ayub suffered through years of illness and isolation. He lost wealth, children, health, but never lost his faith. His dua was not one of demand, but of deep humility. Indeed, adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful. That soft plea, born of surrender, led to complete healing and restoration. His rise was not loud, but it was lasting. Zachariah prayed for a child even in old age, knowing the odds were impossible by worldly standards. But he didn't let go of hope. And when he finally surrendered the matter entirely to Allah, Allah granted him Yahya, a child pure and wise. This was a rise not just in fatherhood but in legacy. And it came after years of quiet, unwavering trust. Nuh spent centuries calling his people, mocked and dismissed, yet he kept obeying. When the time came, Allah instructed him to build an ark, something that made no sense to those around him. But he didn't question, he surrendered. And through that ark, he was saved. His rise wasn't just survival, it was in being the only one who truly followed divine guidance. The people of the cave in Surah Al-Kahf were young men who stood against the falsehood of their time. They left everything behind to preserve their faith. Allah placed them in sleep for years, and when they awoke, their surrender became a story for all generations. They rose not with armies, but with courage and conviction born from surrender. Even Adam, after his mistake in Jannah, shows us how surrender leads to elevation. He didn't justify or blame, he repented sincerely. Allah accepted his words and forgave him. It was in that moment of humble return that Adam was honored again. In Islam, it's not falling that defines you, it's what you do after. Surrender lifts the sincere. The people of Badr, outnumbered and unequipped, stood before a mighty army, but they had one weapon the world couldn't see: full surrender to Allah. They didn't rely on their strength, they relied on His help. And that trust brought victory against all odds. It wasn't numbers that won, it was submission that raised them. Bilal, a former slave, tortured for saying Ahad, Ahad, one God, surrendered his comfort and safety for the truth. And because of that, he rose to be the first muazzin of Islam. The man once beaten on the sands of Makkah was now honored on the rooftops, calling the faithful to prayer. That's what surrender does. It lifts you in ways people can't. Hajar Ra'e, left alone in a barren desert with her child, ran between two hills in desperation, but in her heart was full submission. She didn't resist Allah's decree. She obeyed and trusted. And from her steps, Allah brought forth Zamzam, a spring that still flows today. Her surrender wasn't forgotten, it became sacred. All these stories are not just history, they're instructions. They show you that the path to rising is not through resistance, but through surrender.